Hi students, welcome to lesson number 30, Industrialization, Urbanization and Social Change. In the context of social change, a close relationship between urbanization and industrialization is assumed as a logical connection. Urbanization and industrialization are looked upon as major agents of modernization, while industrialization and urbanization accelerates the modernization of societies. The extent and pattern of their modernizing roles vary with the conditions existing in each society. Industrialization and urbanization are interrelated processes as they have occurred concomitantly in various parts of the world. The development of the modern city is closely associated with industrialization. Industrialization affects in a very significant way not only the rate of growth of a particular urban area, but also the type of growth in urbanization and relative level of development. The objectives of the lesson are to understand the meaning of industrialization and urbanization, 2. To know the relationship between these two processes, 3. To find out the meaning and process of social change, 4. To analyze how industrialization and urbanization leads to social change. What is industrialization? According to Wilbert E. Moore, industrialization is the extensive use of inanimate sources of power in the production of economic goods and services. The process of industrialization is not limited solely to manufacturing, as agriculture is also subject to mechanization, as are services such as transportation and communication. The scientific advances of the 18th century brought Western Europe to the beginning of new era, which ushered in the Industrial Revolution. The first stage of Industrial Revolution was marked by the development of machine industry to replace handicraft. Industrialization in the Western Europe was preceded by extensive value changes. The underlying changes in values as the invasion of rational thought into many areas previously considered sacred. The rational system of thought was first applied in the economic field, and this had its impact on all to her social institutions. The application of power-driven machinery not only gave rise to the factory system of production, but also mechanization of agriculture, transportation and communication. The concentration of factories gave rise to industrial cities, and the growth of industrial cities resulted in the migration of population into them. The development of factory system of production also expanded the corporate business method. The use of machines gave rise to greater division of labor and specialization. The new mode of production resulted in greater increase in production and reduction in cost of production. The increase in quality and quantity of production brought about a rise in the level of living and led to the rise of a new class structure and new economic philosophies. The industrial society is dynamic. Society entered into another era marked by changes as dramatic and massive as the Industrial Revolution itself. Mass production was made possible by new sources of power from oil and electricity, and huge national and international markets produced the second Industrial Revolution. With the growing industrialization, the economy of a society becomes increasingly efficient in meeting basic organizational and individual requirements, so that considerable amount of resources and effort can be directed toward other kinds of collective activities. The social and cultural development of a society is therefore no longer limited by relentless or survival demands of survival. According to Talcott Parsons' view that the isolated nuclear family is the typical family suitable to modern industrial society. He states that there is a functional relationship between the isolated nuclear family and the economic system of industrial society. The industrial mode of production gave rise to an economic organization which influences all sections of the society. Industrialism as a configuration of technology, economy and business values emerges as one of the most widely spread culture systems in human history. No social institution, be it education, polity, family, religion or any other, has escaped its influence. Industrialization and industrialism. A new cultural system emerged with industrialization. This new system, industrialism, goes well with industrialization. Industrialism is identified by mass production system, rapidly changing technology, high level of urbanization, bureaucratic organization and formal relations. Modern industrial system with a specialized division of labor demands considerable geographical mobility from its labor force. Individuals who possess specialized skills are required to move to places where those skills are in demand. Rapid industrialization attracts people in the form of labor force from villages and their families. This weakens or breaks up the traditional kinship ties of the urban industrial recruit. Village identifiers are transferred to the cities. The division of labor is complex and the worker is reduced to the passive role of tending machine. The worker feels insecure, unhappy and powerless and articulates his feelings through specialized interest groups and association like the trade unions. Impersonal relationship typical of industrial society leads to instrumentalism. Relationships are based on rational utility to each other rather than on human reciprocity. Relationships are not primary but secondary and role oriented instead of person oriented. High growth of industrialization and urbanization provides the social milieu for the mass society. This can be well understood as a mechanical society in which people are increasingly treated as part of a mass subjected to mass production system and easily manipulated by the mass media, which brings into existence the mass culture. As a result of industrialization, the individualistic outlook on life became predominant. The capitalism grew fast in power and competence. This ideal of life became the maximization of the abilities, capacities and powers of individual. The consequence of the process of industrialization is the process of urbanization. The speedy growth is having deep impact upon society. The industrialization is not only pushing up the urban population but is also affecting the social conditions in nearby villages. Because of industrialization, the population in the cities has gone up. The process of industrialization increases the urban population and also it is on account of industrialization that there is progressive rise in the population of cities in India. Whatever social impact is due to urbanization is indirectly due to industrialization. Let us understand the meaning and process of urbanization. Urbanization is the movement of population from rural to urban areas and the resulting increasing proportion of a population that resides in urban rather than rural areas. According to Thomson-Warren, urbanization has been defined as the movement of people from communities concerned chiefly or solely with agriculture to other communities, generally larger, whose activities are primarily centered in government, trade, manufacture or allied interest. According to Anderson, urbanization is not a one-way process but it is a two-way process. It involves not only movement from villages to cities and change from agricultural occupation to business, trade, service and profession, but it also involves changes in the migrants' attitudes, beliefs, values and behavior patterns. Urbanization is identified with 5 characteristics: money economy, civil administration, cultural changes, written records and innovations. According to Worth, defines urbanization as a process of extension or accentuation of the mode of life, the characteristic of a city. According to J.C. Mitchell, defines urbanization as the process of becoming urban, moving to cities, changing from agriculture to other pursuits common to cities and corresponding changing of behavior patterns. Urbanization is not only a matter of growth of towns and cities, nor is it merely a concentration of people in towns or cities. It is behavioral and organizational changes. From demographic aspect, it is the density of population as the index of urbanization. The causative factors behind urbanization varied from time to time. In the prehistoric period, urbanization was synonymous with the origin and rise of civilization itself, manifesting itself essentially as a cultural process. In the historical periods from ancient times to the medieval period, urbanization was inextricably related to the rise and fall of kingdoms, dynasties, and essentially a political process. In recent times, after industrial revolution, urbanization has been associated with industrialization and economic development. In this sense, urbanization is essentially an economic process. A high level of urbanization cannot be achieved without an increase in economic development, which itself is part of a nation's evolution from dependency on an agricultural economy to dependency on an industrial economy. The rapid urbanization process gave rise to the modern industrial city depended on the process of industrialization. One finds that urbanization was closely tied to industrialization as cities developed adjacent to sources of cheap energy based first on water, power and then on coal, and at sites where river, lakes or canals permitted the assembly and dispersal of bulky raw materials and finished products. So close was the industrial production and urbanization. Hence, urbanization is not merely a concentration of people in the cities and their incorporation into its systems of life, but is essentially a process of cumulative accentuation of the distinctive mode of life characterizing urbanism. Let us concentrate on urbanization, urbanism as a way of life. Urbanism as a way of life is identified with the characteristic features of city. A city is characterized by a relatively large, dense and socially heterogeneous population. The effect is realized on social relationship, social organization and personality of individuals are size of population, density of population and heterogeneity. The immediate consequences of size, density and heterogeneity of population are variations in personal traits, occupation, cultural life and ideas of individual members of the urban community. Population featured by variations, bonds of kinship and other primary group sentiments and solidarity tend to become weak and be replaced by more formal and impersonal relationships. The city life makes it necessary for the individual to depend upon a number of people and organization for the satisfaction of needs. As a result of the city life, the urban man tends to gain emancipation from primary group control. Thus, along with the anonymity, superficiality and transitoriness of city life leads to a state of anomie or the social void. According to Worth, the features of urbanism are a complex division of labor with a diversified occupational structure which forms a major basis of the system of social stratification. B. High territorial and social mobility. C. Marked functional dependence of the population. D. Substantial personal anonymity in interpersonal contacts and segmentalization of social roles and role interactions. E. Reliance on indirect modes of social control, and F. Normative deviance. Social change due to industrialization and urbanization. Social change refers to a process resulting in some difference, alteration, modification or replacement in the society. These aspects of change can be felt in terms of the existing ways of living, thinking, attitudes, relationships, structures and functions of society, and in the conditions of life. Change implies the emergence of something new which either replaces the old or modifies it. Industrialization has promoted not only urbanization but has affected social structure and social institutions. Its one impact is seen on increasing the importance of specialized education, which in turn has affected the age for marriage. Mature and grown-up youths postpone their marriages till they complete their education and settle in life. Post-puberty marriages then affect marital as well as intra-family relations. Individuals become more conscious of their individual interests and aspirations. Industrialization has given impetus to mobility also. Mobility involved is essentially lateral rather than a marked change of social status. As the worker in the industry achieves skill, his social status also changes, though the change is based more on horizontal than vertical basis. Industrialization has affected the means of control. Informal means have given place to formal means. Industrialization has given rise to market economy, which does not accept the traditional oral means of social control, but lays emphasis on written control measures. Industrialization has led to the growth of trade unions, which in turn have affected the employer-employee relations. The unions have focused on protecting the interest and social welfare and social security of the workers. This made the government to enact social legislation. Industrialization showed its effect on development of means of communication, which has reduced self-dependence of villages, increased longevity of life and promoted commercialized recreation. Industrialization also affected the interest and the values of society to the extent that individual identity, status, commitment and behaviors have come to be reshaped and reoriented. Urban population of India is expanding more rapidly after independence. The city is where they come looking for jobs. In the 1901 census, 10.8% of the total population lived in cities. In 1991, this gone up to 25.73%, and by 2001 nearly 35% will be in urban residents. In the coming years, there will be more than 37 cities with the population of 1 and 10 million. One factor which has contributed relatively to the increase in urban population is industrialization. Push and pull factors account for the movement from villages to cities. The push factors like population increase leading to fewer jobs to go round in the traditional agricultural sector, where agriculture is becoming modernized. Reduction in jobs takes place. Of the strongest pull factor is the prospect of making a better living than as a rural peasant. Facilities such as electricity, clean water and educational, communication and recreational are available in a city. The other factor is cultural attraction and modern way of life. For the young villagers, the appealing feature is that the urban wealth and lifestyle, but there is deeper desire to become urbanized, to think and to feel like urban youth. Individualism takes birth in city, and individual gets opportunity to break traditional boundaries and achieve the goals and aspirations that gave him an identity of his own. Urbanization has led to the growth of commercialism, monetization of economic relationships, factory and workshop employment for many, and popularization of mass media for leisure and entertainment, and growth of modernized elites. It has not only increased the growth of slum areas, it has also affected family relations, intercaste and intercommunity relations, status of women, rate of crime and juvenile delinquency. Urbanization brought changes in workforce structure, that is, the people engaged in primary, secondary and tertiary occupations, trade, transport, public administration, banking and other services, and rural-urban productivity gap. Besides industrialization and urbanization, India have had their own patterns. Despite the persistence of traditional cultural values and institutions in the Indian society, these processes have brought about modernizing changes. Tradition also got reinforced in the process of modernization. The modern media of communication is being used for spreading the ritual order. Education, mass media, exposure, use of modern transport, banking, other rational monetary transactions, modern medicine and political culture create a broad cultural foundation of modernizing in the cities and industrial centers. Within a structural framework of ranking and distance from the cities, cultural values and information flow steadily from the cities to the villages. Urban returnees bring with them many elements of modern ways of life and habits from the cities to the villages. Despite the persistence of traditional cultural values and institutions in the cities, urbanization and industrialization foster many cultural norms and material conditions which microscopic and modernizing the physical conditions of the city life call for many compromises in the traditional mode of living and traditional culture. New colonies have more heterogeneous ethnic nature and differ fundamentally from caste neighborhoods of the past. Increased use of modern transport, modern medicine and political culture create a broad cultural foundation of modernization in the cities and industrial centers, which merge into the formation of the great cultural tradition of modernizing in India. While urbanization is continuous and complex process whereby it refers to the shift of population from rural areas to urban settlements, industrialization signifies the structural shift of labor force from primary to secondary mode of production. The former urbanization indicates the concentration of people, while the later industrialization that of economic activities. In conclusion, it is said that as urbanization is the diffusion of economic innovations and a process of social change and spatial development, although industrialization is enmeshed with urbanization, yet urbanization is not merely the concomitant of industrialization only, but a consequence of the whole gamut of factors underlying the process of economic growth and social change. Industrialization had deep impact on society. As a result of industrialization, the process of urbanization was greatly accelerated and means of communication developed rapidly. Thus, the general standard of living was raised from economic as well as social point of view. More interest was shown in education, arts and science. There was political awakening and the society began to be democratized. Thus, the process of industrialization and urbanization had deep impact upon all aspects of society. Therefore, the impact of industrialization and the impact of urbanization are in fact the facets of the same underlying process, namely industrialization.